Hi, everybody. This is Marie from the Innovation Group, and welcome to another Emerging Leaders of Gaming webinar brought to you by the Innovation Group. I just want to give you a brief overview on the functionality of GoToWebinar before we get started. So you should be able to see the file that I'm sharing with you, and this slide shows where your various windows are, including panelist cameras, this PowerPoint presentation, which is available in the Handouts window, and the control panel. You can choose to follow along with us to view the presentation or download it directly and go through it at your own speed. The next slide shows how to expand any of these separate windows to go to full screen. Just check on the double arrows in the bottom right corner of your selected window, or to escape full screen, click those arrows again or hit the escape button. You can also minimize and maximize your control panel by clicking the orange arrow at the top. You'll notice that you're automatically muted throughout the webinar, but to ask questions, expand your control panel and look toward the bottom right in the questions section. Just type your question and hit send, and we'll reserve 10 minutes at the end to cover as many questions as possible. If you're on a mobile phone, your functionality will be slightly more limited, but you'll see your menu items at the bottom. To toggle back and forth between panelist cameras in the presentation, swipe from left to right. And to advance through the presentation on your own, since you won't be able to see ours live, swipe down for each new slide. The menu also shows where you can access the presentation, also called Handouts, or ask a question. As for frequently asked questions, if you run into any technical issues during the webinar, call the GoToWebinar customer service team at the number that I've been displaying at the tops of all these slides. Also, we'll post a recording of this webinar on our Emerging Leaders page within a few days, so stay tuned for that. And now here's the Innovation Group's Operations Planning Director, Mike Vinaski, to kick things off.
Thanks, Marie. For those of you who have recently joined us, welcome to the Emerging Leaders of Gaming panel discussion on online gaming strategies for casinos. As Marie mentioned, this session is being brought to you by the Innovation Group. Like Marie said, I'm a director with the Innovation Group's Denver office, and I'll be moderating today's webinar. Let's go ahead and get started. This webinar will focus on the decision many brick-and-mortar casinos face today: whether to expand online and how. We have a set of questions to ask our panelists, and we'll also be accepting questions from the audience throughout the discussion, and I'll leave time at the end of the webinar to allow our panelists to address these questions. With that, we'll introduce our panelists and have them tell us a little bit about themselves. Our first panelist is Wolf Rosenberg. Wolf is CEO and founder at American iGaming Solutions.
Hi, everybody. And like Mike said, I've got 17 years of online gaming experience, and really focusing in Europe initially, but now focusing in the United States. But we work with iGaming operators. We work with brick and mortar casinos that are moving towards an online property. We work with regulatory commissions, really all over the world. Whether it's for new iGaming properties or to implement new technology, that's what we really focus on. And I'd like to also introduce my partner, Itzik Akiva.
Hey everyone, my name is Itzik. Like Wolf, been in the gaming industry for quite a few years now, about 14 or so. Started in the traditional online gaming industry in Europe, operating casino and poker. Then making a switch into helping primarily brick and mortar operators in North America with new technologies, be it social gaming, real money gaming were available, daily fantasy, real money skill games, etc. Primarily focused on the operational and marketing sides of the business, as well as strategic planning.
Yeah, what he said.
All right, with that, we'll go ahead and get started with the questions. And attendees, please remember to submit your questions directly via the Q&A functionality. And we'll be listing the questions, as Marie said, on the screen that you can see now. So for our first question, why should casinos consider expanding their land-based operations online?
I think I'll get started with this one. I think that the vision of a combination of brick and mortar and online operation, it's definitely the future for many casinos. That's already the present. They're already doing it or exploring it in different ways. I think there's an element of the technical progression towards online gaming and everything that it means, but there's also the organizational part of it and how the traditional brick and mortar organization, with all of its knowledge and skills and staff, how do we transform into something that can now also contain or operate or understand an online operation, and what this online operation is will vary. So that's an essential skill that those organizations need to develop, and the focus here is on developing. It doesn't happen overnight, and it's not something that you will acquire just by hiring people. I think that's something that is going to get ingrained into your operation with time. So you better start that process earlier and experiment and learn from it than wait until it's really you're pressed against with your back against the wall.
I'd like to add to that. You know, and this is a generalization, but in general, as an industry, the gaming industry is awesome at getting people to come into a brick and mortar facility, but we're absolutely horrible at engaging them once they leave the property and keeping our brand in front of them. So having an online or a digital property is a real good way for us to keep that brand awareness going, and we're able to use convergence to cycle this traffic. We're able to, whether it's with rewards or offers or just the branding alone, we're able to bring those people back into the brick and mortar and cycle that traffic.
Yeah, and I think there's definitely certain advantages or elements that we can gain from expanding online. The simplest one will be, yeah, we can generate more revenue. We can increase revenue from the new vertical, which can be, you know, they can have their own P&L and essentially be a profit center for us. But there's a lot of other elements or other objectives that we can include in that, and we may want to focus on. So again, like Wolf said, we want to be able to bring our brick and mortar players back. We want to engage them when they're not on property. We want to be able to offer them other things. We're able to, for example, make sure that they get better offers from us just because of what we understand from their online activity. We can also introduce our traditional brick and mortar offering to newer audiences. It could be younger ones, it could be ones that don't normally come into our facility, or maybe they don't know what we have to offer aside from just gaming or gambling. So there's definitely a lot of elements. It's just a matter of understanding what we want to focus on and making them the priority throughout the entire process of onboarding an online property.
Sorry, I just wanted to, whoever's in charge of the slides, can we go back, because we're still on the first one, the why should we consider this? We're not on options yet, but no, that's okay.
Sorry about that. I was typing an email and it messed up.
I was thinking, wow, that was really quick.
Sorry.
I think, Mike, can we continue this a little more on the why?
Yeah. I guess when you're considering going online, I guess how can businesses internally make the case? I know you touched on some points, obviously the revenue stream, kind of broadening the audience, but are there any other additional points along those lines?
Yeah, I'd like to answer that first, and it's like I know you'll have some things to say about this as well. But first you want to take what types of businesses or casinos should do this, and it really depends on when you're making this case internally. It really depends on what the objective is. So we just mentioned, is it increasing our revenue off property? Is it bringing those people back for increased visitation? Or is it simply just a branding exercise? It really depends on what the objectives are, what type of vertical we're going to be doing. Are we allowed to do real money? Are we only allowed to do social? As well as what are the providers that we can match with, the vendors. So it's, if we have, let's just say we're a small tribal casino in a very rural setting, then we might be looking at doing a social gaming play where we've got a vendor that's working with us that's totally turnkey, because we might not have the financial or the human resources to do, say, what somebody in Atlantic City can do. So it's really going to depend on each individual operator's what their real objectives are.
Yeah, I think once we define those objectives and we know exactly what we're doing, because a lot of the time, unfortunately, even though there's a lot more awareness and education out there with operators, a lot of the time the process is, okay, somebody within the organization is pushing to do online, and it is as vague as it gets, really. What is online? What do we want to? Why do we want to do it? Do we want to do it because the neighboring casino has something, or do we want to do it because we really understand what it means and what it entails, and what's the effort that comes with it? And to Wolf's point, is it turnkey? Are we now going to load our existing stuff with a lot more tasks in an area that they probably are not as comfortable with? So all of these things should lead into a proper, really realistic view of what it is that we're going towards. And it could be an evolvement of things. You can start with one thing and then evolve into others. But the point is really to have a very clear idea of what it is that you're trying to achieve. Once you have that, I think everything becomes a lot easier when it comes to picking the right vertical for what you want to achieve, picking the right operational model. Again, is it maybe outsourced? Is it in-house? All of those details that can make a huge difference. And based on all of those things, making sure that we have the right partner. And the right partner could be someone that will do most of the work for you, or someone that can just give you the platform and you do most of the work, depending on what you want to be comfortable with and how much control you want to have over things and what kind of resources you want to put into this. So all of this, when you have all of this together, then you can move into, you can have the strategy, but now you can also move into the tactics of like, what are the tie-ins that we're going to have at the brick and mortar with the online property, if at all. Sometimes we won't have tie-ins, sometimes we will have everything tied together so that we can achieve all of these objectives. Like it could be like a joint VIP program, it could be a reward system, it could be all kinds of things like that. And we want to make sure that our platform can provide all of that for us.
Yeah, I think that's a good segue into our next question, which is just focusing on the options to go online. So what are the options to move online?
I guess I'll get started with that a little bit. And unfortunately, the answers to what are the options are usually, it depends. And nothing is really simple, definitely not in the US. So yeah, it depends on your jurisdiction, it depends on your regulatory landscape, it depends if you're a tribal operator or if you operate under state regulation, more commercial operation. So all of these will determine your options. And sometimes you have multiple options, not just one, and you may want to pursue some of them, or you just going to need to focus on one of them, right? So at a high level, we can say that we're looking at iGaming, which is like the code word for real money gambling online. And that's here again, we're going to have the question of what can you do? Can you do casino? Can you do sports betting? Can you do poker? Even within that, you're going to have questions. What does the regulatory landscape allow you to do when it comes to specific games, specific content, etc. Then moving outside of that, you will have the social gaming, which has been kind of booming in recent years, and for many people that come from traditional real money gambling background, I know when the whole phenomena of social gaming started, I can say about myself, I was kind of skeptical, like why in the hell people will do something like that? Why would they play and even put money into something that they can never get anything out of, but mimics a casino? But the reality is that it works, that there's a lot of players that enjoy that. It's becoming a huge industry. And there too, there's a lot of possibilities for brick and mortar casino, regardless of the size, to kind of take advantage of that. Other elements, I would say, just before we move deeper into all of them, esports, which is becoming a growing point of interest within the casino world. It's not per se a gambling product, and we can discuss that a little bit now. And then you have things like online real money skill game, which involve real money and are played online and can be considered legal in about 40 something states right now in the US. And then you have other additional technologies that are kind of in between an online operation and the brick and mortar operation, like mobile on-premise, for example, and other things like that. So there's a bunch of options to choose from. Not everything is available to everyone, but there's a lot of things to consider.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment too on the combination of all those. So, for example, you might be able to do online gaming for real money, and then the question is, should we do social also? Or maybe we've started with social, but now we can also do. We actually work in Pennsylvania where online for real money is coming, and the question is, do they continue to use social or not? We've seen some operators, especially in New Jersey, that are able to do both. They both serve different groups. They both cross over where they're able to cross-market one another. So you might not be able to do online real money in a certain state, but you might be able to do social and tie in esports. So you might be able to do more than one of these options. Another one that that we can talk about is mobile on-premise as well, which it's basically online gaming, but it's geofenced to your property. So it allows customers to play in their hotel rooms or at the spa from their own mobile devices.
Specifically on the mobile on-premise, have you guys one kind of experienced that on a property and as a follow-up, have worked with any properties that are using that, and kind of what impact have they seen, whether just from a loyalty perspective to actual revenue?
I have worked with a property that is actually implementing it now, and I can't really talk too much about it for NDA reasons. However, I will say this, as far as its impact goes, I think we'll see that it's a much better play for a larger resort that has multiple amenities versus a smaller property. And we actually are seeing smaller properties that are interested in it. However, you really need to do some feasibility on that. It's not an expensive solution. However, I think its performance will do well where there's, like I said, multiple amenities. So if there's a golf course and somebody wants to make sports bets while they're doing that, they can. If somebody's at the pool and they are able to make wagers while they're there, or even in their room or in a bar or restaurant, it's the new version. Like if you've ever gone to Vegas and you went to a cafe to eat and they've got a Keno runner that's running around and you can bet on Keno while you're eating your pancakes. It's the same thing, except instead of that Keno runner, it's digital and it's on your mobile device. So I think that, the jury is really out, but I think it will do well on larger resorts.
Mhm.
I'll also say that, I mean, the technology is, we can say, is proven. It's not brand new technology. I don't think that we've seen it being properly implemented in the U.S. on any real large scale. But as Wolf said, it's probably going to do better on the larger casinos, larger resorts. I will say that there could be also different reasons for implementing mobile on premise. It could be some casinos in certain jurisdictions are taxed by the number of tables that they have or number of machines that they have, and that could be a way to circumvent that. Others have really lines, literally queues of people at peak times, and they need to accommodate them and provide some kind of a solution for them. That could be it. And with others, it could just be being able to provide something new, something innovative. So there could be different reasons. It's all going to essentially tie into the same type of solution.
Right. And then on esports, so I mean, we've seen several Las Vegas properties move into esports from a physical brick and mortar perspective. But what kind of opportunities are there for gaming properties in general within esports online?
We actually did a really exhaustive research study for an operator on this subject, and they wanted to know what are the opportunities for casinos within esports. And what we found was there's so many different parts to the ecosystem, and whether that is a casino, and let's take away the betting part. So let's just talk about esports and the operations. There's the content providers, the publishers. You have the tournament organizers. You have the streaming channels. There's so many different the actual teams. There's a lot of different plays that casinos can make in investing in that. But what we really found was and it's like, you let me know if you think or you disagree, but I think the real play here is really to provide a space for on property for players to come and play, and whether that is an all ages area where it's basically like a web cafe, but it's a much nicer one, and you're basically renting time. Or it's an adult lounge where there's adult beverages and it's restricted, or it's a combination of Monday through Thursday it's all ages, and Friday through Sunday it's an adult area. A lot of casinos are looking to do large plays with large tournaments, and I think it's a good idea. You run one or two of those a year and it's great, but what do you do in the meantime? If you are looking to become an entertainment venue that also has gambling versus just being a casino, you need to put a lounge in. And we're seeing that actually start to pop up all over the country. At least there's just a lot of interest in it right now. We have a former client that had a kids zone in it, and they are transitioning out from the carnival games to having esports stations because it really gives there's a lot of research out there that shows us that adults would like to come to casinos, but they really have nothing for their children to do. And this is an area where the kids want to play video games, and this is an excellent opportunity to get them in. And I'm not trying to say, hey, these are your next customers, start catering to them when they're underage. The point is that they're looking for a social outlet as well, versus just playing at home. They're looking to hang out with their friends. They go to their friends' houses and they play. This is an area for them to come and hang out.
And if I can add, the definition of having something for the kids to do, well, what are the kids? In a way, a lot of people come to a casino because of the amenities, because of the ability to enjoy a lot of things that are not gambling. And there's this huge audience of people that's what they like to do. And, we just see by the numbers. They enjoy it. they're fans of it. They're really engaged with the esports, and whether it's to give them an opportunity to play or just an opportunity to come together and enjoy watching tournaments, just like you watch any sporting event, and you want to enjoy the bar and you want to enjoy the nice lounge and all of that stuff. These are things that will attract people, and they will spend money. They will spend money on drinks. They'll spend money on staying overnight. They'll do all of those things. Maybe they won't spend money gambling, and that's something that I think casino operators need to kind of accept and understand. Maybe they'll spend money on certain elements of gambling, like maybe blackjack, but not slots because it's not appealing to them. But overall, esports and understanding what it means, understanding that it's something that also crosses multiple ages, so that's something sensitive to kind of understand. How do we host an event, but understand that there could be 16-year-old and 18-year-olds there, and what do we do about it, and all kind of things like that. I think this is something that casinos will definitely need to start looking much, much deeper into. And there are different variations of how you can do it, how you can approach it, depending on who you are, where you're located. Are you more of a destination casino, or are you in the middle of the city? There's a lot of variables there, but I think it's definitely something that we as an industry can embrace and better understand.
And one last thing on this, we're talking about the kids. The reality is that the prime ages are in their 20s, and they have disposable revenue. So, we looked at, advising our client to have a separate facility for all ages or underage players, and having something on property for players that are over the legal age of gaming, whether if they want to have other skill games for real money on the floor around that. It's a cumulative play. It's not just about esports. We need to have skill games. We need to have some table games. Whatever we can make that's Instagrammable for the 20s, between the 21 and 29. That's what we need to do.
I will say, however, and we need to be really realistic about how big this industry is and how it's maturing. It's maturing, and there are a lot of very professional organizations that are establishing themselves into it. So thinking that, we're going to put a lounge and everybody will come, that's a very simplistic way of looking at things. Or saying, we're going to host an event and that's going to make money because thousands of people will come. That's a possibility, but it's not a very simple and very immediate one. So I just want to, being the realistic type that I am, want to make sure that everybody understands that it requires a lot of knowledge, a lot of understanding of this industry, connecting with the mentality of this audience, which is very different than what we've been used to in the online, in the gambling world, be it online or brick and mortar. So really educating ourselves about it is key, and it's never too late to get started.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. Keeping an eye on the clock, I think it's time to move on to the next question. So for properties that are considering or close to moving online, is there a recommended process for them to follow?
Itzik, do you want to start this one, or do you want me to? This is
I can start quickly. I can start quickly.
This is not scripted.
No, yeah, we have a very nice process that we kind of worked on and tweaked based on the real life experience with a lot of our clients. So I think usually we talked about all of those things, how to take the decision. But now the decision has been made. You know what kind of verticals you want to get into. You have an idea of what it means. So now what, really? How do we make sure that this online property or this online activity that we're trying to onboard is going to be successful? And I think following the process is critical here, because what's happening is that a lot of the operators are bombarded really with vendors, with suppliers, with all kind of people that like to create all kind of buzzwords. And if it's in an area that you don't really understand, then you're going to get confused. So having a proper process where you kind of maintain control over it, and you're not led by someone else that has a commercial interest in selling you something, I think that's kind of a critical point. Normally, I would say, I'll touch on the first one, and Wolf can go on to the next. I'll say that you start with education and feasibility. Really understanding, and I'm talking all the stakeholders, at least the relevant ones. And it's not just the marketing guys or the IT guys. It's a lot of people. It could be compliance. It could be finance. There's a lot of people that need to understand what it is that we're going to do, really. The one thing that we don't want to do is people think, oh, it's that online thing. Talk to that guy. Only he knows about the online, or she knows about it. It needs to be kind of onboarded and embraced by a lot of functions. So that part of the education, what are the operation models? What are the options? What are the KPIs? You don't need to become overnight an expert, but you really need to understand what you're talking about. That's important. Then having a proper feasibility study. Okay, just going through the high-level marketing and business plan. Essentially, think about this new vertical as if you would open a new amenity in your casino, a new restaurant, a new spa, a new anything that you do. You're going to build around it. You're going to properly plan for it. We believe that this is the right approach. Unfortunately, not everybody is doing that. Wolf, you want to take it on for the next one?
Yeah, I just wanted to add on to that just real quick, and then I'll move on. But we get hired by a lot of operators that want to start a new vertical. We also get hired by a lot of operators that have started something, and we are hired to clean it up because it wasn't done properly from the beginning. And we have, this process that we're talking about. It really came from us working with clients, and some of them wanted to launch online gaming for real money. Some of them want to do social gaming. Some of them are looking to add skill games or esports. So whatever the new technology is, this process is key to doing it right. And so we start with this feasibility thing simply because it might be doing very well somewhere else, but it might not be right for your market or your operation or your budget. There's a lot of factors that go into this, but let's just say, we have decided that we're going to do this, and we've looked at it is feasible. We know we can make money doing this, and the next step really goes on towards what Itzik was saying, that a lot of the buzz is created by manufacturers or vendors that are selling something, and so you might have, I'm going to just use this example, and Itzik loves it when I do this. But let's just say you have a really nice bright red Ferrari, and you have a really crappy red car from the 80s. And as long as all the lights work and it passes emissions testing, they're both licensable, but you might not want to drive one of them. Conversely, you might not have the technical expertise to drive the real big red sports car that's got a lot of power. So we need to find what's right for you, not what's right for the industry or not what's right for your competitor. And so here we look at a comparison matrix. We look at, I'll just use social gaming for example. We want to take a look at multiple vendors and take a look at every single piece of them, very, very in depth. So we currently have for social checklist of over 110 items. So we're looking at things, I'll just off the top of my head, I'm thinking of the big ones like KYC. Is it important to your organization that underage players are not playing or not able to make purchases on your social gaming property? It is to some don't care. But if it is to your organization, not all the social gaming platforms are able to accommodate that. Are they easily able to integrate into your CMS and your rewards program? Well, they'll all tell you that they can integrate, but how many of them, how many systems have they actually integrated with already? What is the timeline for that? Content is another one. What type of content do they have? A lot of them will tell you, hey, we can integrate with anybody, or we can get anybody's content, and that may be true, but they're not telling you that the cost of doing that is prohibitive. Who are they currently integrated with, and who are they currently running right now? What titles are performing best? What titles do you have on your slot floor that they have? So there's a lot of questions that we have to ask to make sure that we are getting the right vendor for the particular operator. And again, at the end of this, we're gonna rate all of these platforms and tell everyone what's good and what's bad about them. But at the end of the day, we will ask, a series of 20 questions to the operator, specifically how important is this aspect to your organization on a scale of 1 to 10? And the answers to those questions really carry a lot of weight, because that's where we're going to make the decision of this vendor is the best one for you. Here's your second choice, here's your third price, and here's how much they cost. You might have a situation where you have a 30-person marketing department in-house, and you've got that all covered. You might not have that at all, and you outsource everything. Which vendor is going to work with you the best and work with another agency? Are they turnkey so you don't have to do anything, or is it so detailed that you have to do everything? So there's a lot of variables in this, but we have to do this comparison matrix to get the right fit. Otherwise, it goes down in flames. So Itzik, do you want to take the next one?
Well, just to compliment on this one, once you select it, you obviously get into negotiation and contracting, and I think there needs to be an understanding of what's kind of standard in this industry in terms of pricing, in terms of time to market, in terms of all of those things. But I think what's also very important and is often kind of overlooked is what are the SLAs, the service level agreement. How is the day-to-day relationship going to be? You're going to get all the attention in the world, pre-launch and in the first 2 months. And is this operator, can they address your needs and tend to your needs, a few months down the road or after launch, or are you going to get stuck back in line and back at the end of this queue and beg for some attention? There's a lot of these components that are going to be very, very important. And again, it's a matter of experience, really. And a lot of these social gaming operators primarily, or even real money now, you're seeing a lot of them trying to get into the US. They don't always know what it's like to actually work with clients like yours. They may have some relevant experience in other places, but they don't always have the right experience. And it's a matter of asking the right questions and having a good understanding of what are you going to get. It doesn't mean that you should not go with them. It's just a matter of getting a very realistic view of how this thing is going to work. I think the kind of moving on to the next step, you decided, so you know which verticals, you kind of went through the process of feasibility, you negotiated, you signed a contract after you compared everyone. Now you need to start doing some integration and onboarding, and that's an important process. The integration and onboarding, if you don't do it right, you're going to pay the price later on, because you have to do it right the first time. Going backwards and making dramatic changes, that's something that costs you a lot of money, both money that you're going to need to pay and money that you will lose. So it's important to do it really right. I think this is the part where, if maybe this project was kind of kept to a certain number of people up until now in the organization, now when you're on board, that's the time to start involving more people. And I think I just got disconnected if you're not able to see me.
Yeah, the video did, but we can still hear you.
Yeah, we can still hear you, Itzik.
I'm rejoining. Sorry about that. But essentially, this is the point where you want to involve a lot of your staff so that they can chime in and they can come and say exactly what they believe are the elements that are going to be important for them, for their respective areas in the business. The finance people will always have a lot of questions. The compliance people will have questions. The marketing folks will have questions. All of those things are extremely important. So getting them involved right from the beginning, I think is crucial. I hope you can see me again now.
Yep.
Here again, you talk about technical integrations, the things that Wolfie touched on how do you get synced with your loyalty plan or with your plan management system. How do you integrate with your own KYC provider? Do you have a different one? What payments look like? All of those elements are super critical for this integration and onboarding process.
I'm going to just move on to the next ones simply because I'm just keeping an eye on the clock. Because this actual topic, the process, we can talk for hours on because we've just seen it go wonderfully right and we've seen it go horribly wrong and everywhere in between. And looking at this next stage, we've done the integrations now. We've got to simultaneously be looking at our pre-launch strategies. The staff, what staff training do we have to do? How do we engage our staff? Doing a full, I can't stress this enough, a full systems audit of looking at the functionality both of the front end of your new online property as well as the back office controls. If there's any sort of reward system or CRM system integrations, are those working properly? Because at the end of the day, we want to know people that play online, what do they do when they physically come into the brick and mortar casino, and vice versa. We also have our marketing strategy and our launch promotions. What are we going to be doing for the next 3 months? Are there holidays coming up? Is there a physical or is there a brick and mortar tie-in? We're going to be running this promotion on property. Do we want to promote that in our online property as well? We want to really look at the big things here are to ease into an operational routine where we're executing promotions and the operations. We're analyzing how did we do, where are the gaps. We're optimizing that, so we're filling those gaps with additional staff or with processes, internal processes or external processes, as well as the marketing side. And then we're going to repeat that. And we're just going to keep doing that until we get all the knobs and dials all set to the right settings. And we want to be continuously building on the 3 pillars of our online property, which is the operations, the actual product, and the marketing. So that's really our process that I said, again, whether this is social gaming or iGaming or whatever new technology it is, we have to do the education and the feasibility. We have to do the comparison of the vendors. We have to look at the integrations and onboarding that and the pre and post launch marketing phases. So that's our process in a nutshell.
Okay. Yeah. It definitely sounds like a
Any
complex
questions?
one. But it's nice to have a definitive kind of step-by-step process to follow.
Yep.
To bring something like this on board, which obviously everyone's hoping if they're introducing it, it will be a success. So moving on to the next question, what are the best practices for operations and marketing for online gaming options?
Why don't you start with this one?
Okay, I think there's a lot of elements that we need to consider. I'll try to go through it quickly because we don't have a lot of time, but there's some decisions that need to be taken. And the first best practice is to really discuss those things and not just assume that they'll get resolved. So how do you do things? It's all about the details. Do you bring things in-house with your current people or with additional staff, or do you outsource everything, and how do you manage that? How does your org chart look once you've taken that decision? Because again, this is like a new baby that needs to be kind of pampered and addressed and kind of grown into something that is an actual vertical. who owns these things? So the ownership is a very, very important part. And I think a lot of the time, what we recommend is really seeing like a top-down approach. So that's if we want to look really at best practices, starting with a top-down approach. Who's the sponsor of this thing within the organization? Who's the one that tells everybody, this is part of our objective, this is not like a side project, this is not a nice to have. We want to do it and we want to do it right, and this is how people are going to be involved. So that is something that I really want to kind of stress a lot because there's a lot of great technologies, but the adoption of those technologies is up to us as people and up to us as an organization. And thinking properly and buying into this process and thinking how we're going to do it right, I think that's the very starting point. From there, you're going to start looking at some synergies, right? How do you create synergies and affect the synergies between marketing, compliance, accounting and finance, content, for example, player development and VIP. So now all of a sudden you have two products, and it could be that, so you have your traditional brick and mortar product, and you're going to have an online product. And there's going to be an overlap. The overlap is not going to be 100%. There are always going to be players from each of those verticals that don't care about the other vertical, but there's going to be an overlap of people that do. And we want to start understanding who they are, what is this audience that we really are going and trying to target, how do they behave, how can we influence their behavior. And that's, again, something that crosses a lot of departments. This is not just like a marketing exercise, okay? So having everybody on board is very key here. Remember, as kind of another best practice, is really to remember that a lot of people, as we said, the brick and mortar guys will not always care for your online product. So it's a matter of how you explain it, how you introduce it. It's something new. Some of them may be already familiar with it. Some of them will not. In the case of real money gambling, for example, if you take the example of New Jersey, not a lot of, well, there are a lot of people that were waiting for online gaming. I'm talking about traditional brick and mortar players that they're expecting the online product. But there were many that tried it and didn't really care too much for it because they didn't like the experience. They didn't like to play ELG slots, etc., or table games. But once Live Dealer was introduced, now you were able to bring a lot of those people and give them a slightly different product and engage them differently. So all of those things are elements that we need to kind of keep in mind. The other way around is people that play on your online properties and will not always care about the experience in the brick and mortar. But it doesn't mean that you want to bring them back just for real money gambling. You could be bringing them back for restaurants or for your entertainment or for the pool or for whatever else you have to offer, and they'll come. So I think taking that holistic approach and not just looking at are we making more money off this and that player and looking very granular, I think that's something I definitely recommend doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And you also might find that you have a good percentage of your database that loves both online and brick and mortar. So it really is, like it's said, it is a holistic approach. We need to take a look at not only the revenues generated directly, but what is, what's the cross-selling. Are the players that are playing online, they might not purchase anything, but they might know let's just say you have the same games in social gaming, your social gaming property, same titles that you have on your casino floor. Well, I might not spend any money on the virtual currency, but I might actually I'm going to try games that I know. Like now all of a sudden I see the same title on your casino floor. I know what symbols I'm looking for, and I put 20 bucks in because I want to get the bonus in real money. So, speaking of online and rewards, we're getting close to that time, and we're not going to ask, we're not going to get to them yet. But the first person that asks a question in the chat, the innovation group has promised that they're going to give that person Super Bowl tickets. That's not really true. I'm kidding, but you should ask questions. So,
Wolf?
yeah, I just got fired, right? Right. Some conditions apply. So, should we? Sorry to steal your job, Mike. I'm just
we can.
The last one.
Move on to the last question. So, like we've said before, this is obviously a complex process, and it does take some learning from the traditional bricks and mortar casino operators. So, what are the most common challenges for casinos taking their operations online, and how can they overcome them?
There's a few of them, and I'll start. The biggest one that we encounter is an organizational challenge. This has to come from the top down. This has to be either, in Indian country, this is a tribal initiative, and we are doing this, or in the commercial setting, the CEO or the general manager, somebody at the top has to say, guys, we're going to do this. Here's our plan. These are our objectives. These are our goals. How do we get there? Because we see the biggest problem is sometimes at the top, they've got a lot of things going on. Everybody does, and unfortunately, what we see is this is just another project that gets dumped onto one department or multiple departments, in addition to the full-time jobs that they have. The brick and mortar is this real important beast that needs to be fed, and the online gaming piece becomes an afterthought. It's a project that does not receive the attention it deserves, and because of that, it's going to fail from the very start. So we see this. It's got to be treated just like it would be if you are opening a new property or you're going to have you're adding a new tower onto the hotel, or there's a new amenity that you're going to build. It's got to come from the top. It's got to be a directive, and I think that's that's the biggest challenge that we see. One of the biggest challenges.
I'll continue and say that on the technology side, first of all, it's the integration is usually not very complicated. However, especially when it comes to social. However, ensuring that the user experience and being able to connect with your player card, for example, so that you can actually do proper analysis on those users and have meaningful data and understanding what to look for in terms of the data. I would say that this is a critical point that can sometimes become a lot more complicated than anticipated. Because here again, you need to integrate with other larger companies, and sometimes 3 or 4 different parties involved in it. So that's one part that is also critical for us as well. And depending on how successful you are in that, I would say reading your data in the right context, right? If only 20% of your online players have connected their player card, make sure that your analysis reflects that, or your conclusions from the analysis reflect that, and you don't jump into any conclusions. If you're able to reach 60, 70, 80% of your online players already cross with some kind of brick and mortar identity that you have, or you can properly match them, now you can have a lot more significant conclusions on how you optimize your activity, how you look at what they do wherever they are, be it on property or at home. So I think having that context is sometimes can be a bit challenging, and it requires people's understanding of what are the KPIs, what are we looking at, and it could be the marketing people, it could be finance people, it could be any analyst that you may have, all these guys.
Okay. Yeah. That actually leads us to one of our audience questions. It's a good segue for that. So first, I guess organizationally, what sort of learning curve do you see U.S. operators running into while bringing these operations into fruition? And then as a follow-up, just I know it's not a cookie cutter approach, but generally, do you have a recommended timeline for operators to plan for when considering online?
Okay. Do you want to take the first one, Itzik? I'll take the second.
Go ahead, Wolf. Good.
All right. So the first one, the learning curve question. You know, I hate to be vague, but it really does depend on the objectives and the organization. So, for example, if they're looking for a turnkey solution, that learning curve obviously is a lot less. They have to look at what their own organizational structure is, who's going to be in charge of managing the marketing, the vendor integration, and the on-property campaigns. So for example, hey, whether it's a physical piece of mail or emails, or there's signage on slot machines, and we're going to launch this new online property, you know, that learning curve is a lot smaller when once you launch and you actually have the vendor taking care of most of the day-to-day operations. If you are looking to optimize every single setting and take a look at, you know, if you're in charge of your own live operations online, that learning curve is a lot steeper. From a timeline perspective, you know, we usually look at, and it also, I'm just going to throw it around 9 months. 9 months is, and it depends on the vendor selection as well. So you might select a vendor that, you know, as an operator, we've got everything in place, but that vendor has other onboarding commitments, and they might take an extra month or two. I've seen projects completely derailed by the legal departments, where and the biggest advice I can give is throw the attorneys in a room, lock them, and throw a sandwich in every once in a while so they can eat. But if they are allowed to really go from here, I'm going to email you my response, and here's a redlined contract, the intention is lost without having a real conversation of, hey, we're a brick and mortar operator, we don't understand what you're talking about, or vice versa. You might have a platform provider that has never really worked with an online or with a brick and mortar casino, and so there's a learning curve there that from a legal perspective that you know, we have to put those guys together and to be able to discuss what the real intention is behind each play. We represent, you know, the operator, but we also have to represent the platform by saying, yes, operator X, this is a standard clause in the online gaming industry. This is how these formulas are calculated. But I'm just going to go out there and just say, on average, you're looking at around a 9-month implementation between we want to do this and it launching, if you want to do it right.
Okay. And I want to try to squeeze one more audience question in. So with many jurisdictions allowing casinos to operate multiple gambling skins or sites, how do you advise clients on the right number of skins or sites to offer?
Wow, that's a whole nother hour. Yeah. You want to take this one, Itzik, or do you want me to answer?
How do we advise on how many skins? Is that a question again? Just want to make sure I have it.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, hold on a minute. This isn't somebody from the Pennsylvania Gaming Board, is it? Before we answer.
I'll answer
my microphone just went mute. I don't know what happened.
This could turn into a somewhat lobby/political type of question. And normally what we try to do is kind of assess the conditions and help our clients with the right solution for them without getting too involved. But I would say that depending on the size of the market, and especially when it comes to, I mean, in casino and even in sports betting, you can have definitely quite a lot of operators. poker is way more challenging once you start introducing too many operators into a market, especially if it's a segregated market with the liquidity is limited to that specific state, and it's not pulled together with other states. Then that's where you're gonna run into difficulty even feeding that product with enough liquidity, players, and funds. I think that the number of skins, to me, something like what we're seeing in New Jersey is definitely quite a reasonable approach, I would say. It gives enough, it creates quite a dynamic market so that new operators can introduce themselves even later on. And there's enough competition so that the existing operators always have to improve their product and marketing and services. I would say that that's kind of critical. My concern is that if you open it up almost unlimited, and we've yet to see that in the US, we need to see what's going to happen in Pennsylvania. That may make the opportunity for each of those operators a lot less interesting, which in turn is going to reduce the investment in marketing and the overall investment in the product, and it's going to be hard to strike a good balance there.
Yeah, I agree. Too much competition.
I will just finish by saying, that if you are already either limiting or opening the skins, the number of skins, in the online world, I believe that it's going to be better to allow operators to consider the online platform as something that includes all verticals. So casinos, sports, and poker, and not apply different rules for the different verticals, because that's going to make it even more challenging for the operators.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. The other thing is, competition is great when the player ends up benefiting from that. But when there's unlimited skins, and you have a brick and mortar operator that now all of a sudden has to compete with an operator that maybe used to operate in the United States back in the days, and they've already got a substantial database and a lot of money to do marketing, it's not necessarily leveling the playing field. It ends up actually hurting the actual brick and mortar operator, and I think we're going to see that in states as we move along. Now, I don't want to mention any of them, but it starts with a P and ends with Pennsylvania.
Yeah, understood. Just like it is with brick and mortar gaming, it's all about finding the right balance of supply and demand.
Sure.
And
Sure.
ensuring a healthy market. With that, that'll be our last question for the webinar. Before we sign off, we want to thank Wolf and Ixit for spending the last hour with us. Also, thanks to Marie for ensuring the webinar ran smoothly. And attendees, please be sure to visit theinnovationgroup.com for more information on emerging leaders, as well as our firm, and follow us on social media. Thanks to everyone for joining today.
Sorry, I just say please fill out the survey, because both Itzik and myself, our mothers would like to know if we did a good job. So fill it out.
Thank you.
I thought you were on this.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, you guys. Thank you so much. This was great.
Thanks.